Ho Chi Minh City is one of 3 autonomous municipalities in Vietnam, with 3 levels of local government at the ward, district, and city level. This autonomy leads to differentiated policy in terms of economic growth and city expansion. Vietnam's Doi Moi policy in the 1980s and economic restructuring led to increasing wealth disparities among Ho Chi Minh City's populations. As the government opened the service markets to profit-making companies, the wealthier citizens were able to meet the price demanded, while urban dwellers had to struggle with the rising cost of basic services that the government no longer offered to the same extent it had in the past. In addition, the rural districts became poorer as the private services became centered around urban areas, resulting in an increased disparity surrounding wealth and service accesses.
Inequalities manifest themselves in the administrative boundaries of the city through the designations of inner city Quan and outer city Hyun districts. These designations coincide with the well-known categories of rural and urban. Politically, outer city Hyun are often depicted as incapable of modern self-governance, and local decisions are routinely overruled by the interests and demands of the central city core. Economically, the designation of space as inner and outer city has profound implications for land values and other economic factors associated with the cost of living. For example, the lowest official land price in outer city Hyun Hokmon for 2010 was $580 USD per square meter, whereas in the neighboring inner city Kwan district, District 12, had a land price of $1160 USD per square meter. Throughout the years, inner and outer city districts have changed over time. This redistricting transforms the political economy of the city. These new designations transform the status of leaders in the newly designated districts and also dramatically alter the land values of the spaces they cover, thus reshaping and redistricting inequalities in Ho Chi Minh City.
As a result of urban core gentrification, there are lower population densities at the neighborhood scale and population decentralization at the city level. The outer core, fringe areas, and suburbs have increased around 30% within 5 years. From 2004 to 2009, for example, the suburbs grew from 1 million to 1.3 million. Due to decentralization, Ho Chi Minh City has also developed satellite zones. Satellite towns provide secondary services and transport connections and are expected to merge with the megacity in the future. Saigon South is considered a miniature city for upper and middle class luxury housing. It consists of an international school, malls, and golf clubs. Compared to the tax-induced narrow buildings in the cores of Ho Chi Minh City, these houses are wider and replicas of each other. The Department of Construction has plans to create 6 more satellite suburbs by 2020. The development of Saigon South consists mostly of gated communities, creating physical, functional, and social segregation. While the structure is carefully planned as shown in the image, the gated communities separate the rich and the poor as well as limit public spaces of social and ritual interactions. Parks within gates would become privatized and only allow residents of the communities, which usually have low density populations.
Road infrastructure has a profound impact on urban poverty and inequality in Ho Chi Minh City. While cleaner, wider, well-lit streets are characteristic of wealthier districts, the streets that navigate poorer areas are dirty, narrow, and often not in contact with drainage, leading to frequent flooding and poor sanitation. These road conditions cause serious health and environmental risk, limit accessibility to essential public services, and limit residents' potential for economic growth. Characteristics of streets in poor neighborhoods often create unsafe conditions for residents. Canals, lakes, and sewers aren't linked to drainage, leading to flooding hazards and decreased environmental safety. This lack of drainage creates floating garbage and breeding grounds for mosquitoes, which greatly threaten residents' health. Additionally, limited street lights create higher levels of violence, which in turn threatens residents' safety. The width of these roads also creates greater population compression and more traffic congestion. Furthermore, the narrow streets in districts with widespread poverty often make vehicles like ambulances and fire trucks unable to pass through, limiting access to essential public services. Lastly, conditions that are manifested by these narrow, poorly serviced, often dilapidated streets prevent business owners from expanding their businesses due to inaccessibility and compromised conditions. In contrast, the roadways in wealthier urban districts are wide, paved, connected to proper drainage, and well-lit, which manifests in safer living conditions and greater access to public services. These distinctions make it clear that road infrastructure is privileging certain areas over others. Therefore, the roadway system in Ho Chi Minh City is one example of how infrastructure has contributed to perpetuating inequality spatially.
The city has focused on a people-centered approach to development. focusing on a variety of industrial growth strategies that will impact the city as a whole. The government will create 4 satellite cities surrounding the urbanized regions to act as paths for city growth. In each of these cities, specialized districts will focus on high-value industries that will incentivize residents to move out of the highly congested Ho Chi Minh City. While this plan would significantly impact those who earn money through the specific industries, it would not address those who are residing in informal settlements within the city. Our research has found that though the government has plans to reduce wealth disparity, there has been little attention given to direct action towards place-based poverty. When proposing alternative solutions that work to decrease the wealth gap and increase the standard of living for vulnerable citizens in Ho Chi Minh City, one has to bear in mind the socio-economic lines that have historically marginalized these groups as a whole.